Welcome everyone to episode 405 of Just Joshing. I'm your host Joshua Pantellaresco, and today is story time on the podcast. I am reading from the Cloud Diver, Chapter 5, Part 5. One more chapter to go, and then we got really just 5 more weeks of Cloud Diver to go. So this week's reading guest is Katie Salidas. I finally guilted you into this, hey Katie? All kidding aside, I'm actually really excited. Katie's one of the most underrated sci-fi fantasy writers out there. She is an incredibly gifted, prolific author who does not get the credit she deserves. And from the bottom of my heart, I truly think you guys should check her stuff out. There's a links in the episode description below. Pick up her stuff. They're amazing. But we're also going to talk about what's going on for this podcast. You got a bonus episode earlier yesterday. This is almost literally within 24 hours you get another podcast, which is unusual. Next week, the Storytime podcast won't be out till Sunday night, Monday morning. My last episode will be Thursday. I'm going to be doing some streaming Friday and Saturday. I have presentations at When Words Collide. This is the digital edition. I think that people are going to have to look at the presentations I have, I hope with some excitement. I'm doing 3. First one is podcasting A to Z. It is literally me doing what I've normally done. There's going to be a little bit more focus on Zoom than in previous presentations in the past, just due to the nature now. But yeah, definitely come on out. Come if you want to learn some more about podcasting. And then literally I talk about freelance writing right after I go into the next meeting. And it's about me freelancing and just what I've learned so far, some solid advice. And then on Saturday, I do an advertising campaign on advertising. So that's going to be fun. I'm going to be doing 3 presentations. Come check them out. You're all invited. But now, let's start with the Cloud Diver, Chapter 5, Part 5. Cloud Diver, Level 1-5, Chapter 5, Feed Void Life. The_truth. The truth is out there. Unverified account. Looks like one of the idiots that blew up at Void Life was identified. They are spreading his picture like the current plague. Up! I jolted awake from my deep slumber. The aches and pains had lessened, but the echo still resided in my body. Just a minute, I grumbled, pulling the blanket over my head. I didn't want to wake up. I want to go back to my happy place in the darkness. Next thing I knew, I was plopped over the side of the bed, hitting the unforgiving floor. I opened my eyes to find Gunblade, fully dressed, looking at me much like Laptop liked to, like I was a bug in her windshield. Void Life coddled you, she said. I didn't know we were on a schedule, I protested. It sounded more like a whining than a protest, but it was, I thought, a semi-valid complaint. Do you think we're the only ones after your Damon, she answered. My exhaustion faded as her question sunk in, but it made sense. I'd been interested whoever had employed them knew I'd retrieved the file from the cloud, but there was the question of how they would go about it. Didn't Gunblade say she was the only one who knew about the place? If so, we had nothing to worry about, other than sick people dying in Golden, which was a good reason to hurry up, I had to concede. Still, I was missing something. Gunblade wasn't telling me the truth completely. If she were the only one that knew about the cloud, they'd have to find it somehow. So what was the danger? I got dressed crisply and staggered after her. I came back to the library main hall where Yelna and Laptop were drinking coffee and eating breakfast. Sleeping Beauty finally awake? Laptop asked, not even looking in our direction. I'm fine, thanks, I said with a bark in my words. Laptop stepped away from his computer throne and stared at me with a specimen in jar face. This time I stared back. For a moment, the two of us were locked in a staring contest. Finally, I blinked. He was the master of the steel gaze. But then, to my surprise, he smiled at me. Well, he's got some bite after all. He's kind of cute when he's like this, Yelna winked. Again? Laptop sighed. I like teasing him. She grinned. I blushed. Anything else? Gunblade said with a clenched voice. I noticed her fists were balled out. Nah, Yelna grinned. Let's get to the distance of finding this Damon. Agreed, Laptop said. It's getting worse out there. The giant screen Yelna had been using yesterday turned on as feeds and streams voiced the news of the day with rapid-fire delivery. Hashtag Dragonflu was the largest trend on the feeds. New comments and concerns were posted every few seconds with images of sick people in quarantine cities. One of the pictures was of Scott himself treating an infected patient with one of those blue syringes I was shot with, and then it disappeared with others. This was spreading to some of the corporate feeds as well. More casualties, I asked? More cities have reported the virus. Wildlife is finally acknowledging it on the feeds. Laptop motioned me over and showed me the latest reports in the room. This dragon flu, as it was described, had confirmed cases in the old North American sector. New Angeles and Phoenix were the latest little metropolis to report the disease. Others, such as Vancouver and Portland, had closed down their borders and were turning away all visitors. They didn't want this virus to come into their borders. Any luck finding Stevie Y? I asked. Is that the name of your daemon? Yelna asked. I nodded. It's sweet that you named him, she said. I like that you treat him with respect. Thanks, I blushed some more. For some reason, she flustered me even more with this than any other ticker she engaged in the previous day. To my surprise, I wasn't feeling blush or rebuttal today. To answer your question, from what she gave us, Yelna pointed to Gunblade while lighting up a cigarette. She was booting up a handheld system. After typing a few commands, she turned her attention to me. We have a record of his nodal signature. The problem is the cloud itself is unpredictable. The locale is very difficult for us to read. Fortunately, we received a signal from the Q-Robs in the cloud. Laptop finished. What kind of signal? Gunblade asked. The nodal signature was identified, Yelna said. It was only for a moment, but at least it gave us a starting point. You think the cloud would be easier for us to scan? Means it's an ancient technology, right? Yes, Laptop said, but the cloud as a system hasn't been used in any capacity for at least 4 decades. That's a blink of an eye in human terms, but in terms of technology, that's down generations. Imagine trying to communicate with your ancestors. We come from them, but the world we live in now is quite different than the world they lived in. In other words, I said, our technology and the cloud are speaking 2 different languages. For our intents and purposes, Laptop looked at Gunblade. He's smarter than he looks. So the cues are like Rosetta Stones? More like a beacon, Gunblade answered. Our mapping system. Stevie Y has been activating cues he's found, I said. An SOS! It gives us a starting point, at least, Gunblade said. We ready? They're waiting for you. They? Where are we going, I asked. A police station, Gunblade answered. Why a police station? You have an APP out on you, Laptop said. Put out last night. APP for what? You aided and abetted the destruction of corporate property, Gunblade answered. You resisted arrest and saved incarceration from corporate authorities. Oh, that's right. I did do all those things. I take back my earlier assessment, Gunblade smirked. Screw you guys, I said as petulantly as you can imagine. Wait, if I'm wanted, then why are we going to a police station? It's the last place anyone will look for you, Gunblade rolled one. The Q-Robs in her hand seemed to calm herself by watching it. Also, the station will provide some protection against the corporate forces that are chasing us. They will not be so eager to engage them. It made a bizarre kind of sense, but some being behind bars terrified. I mean, I was a criminal. Me! I never imagined this would be my fate. Panic gripped me. Seeing my confusion, Gunblade growled and closed her fist around the Q-Rob. I heard it crunch and flinched. We're doing this to rescue your friend, she said. You'll be fine. Promise? I asked. Gunblade softened. Promise. I looked at Laptop and Yelna. What will you two be doing? Torturing rich old men and women for money. Yelna had a wicked grin on her face. She means monitoring you two from here while you go into the cloud, Laptop answered. If you find your daemon, we'll be his exit from the cloud. We have a room where he can exist here, Yelna answered. We'll keep him safe, even if you don't make it out of there. That was a comforting thought. Any more questions, Gunblade asked. I realized that this was a course of action that I understood. It might even work. I shook my head. Gunblade walked towards the exit. For better or worse, we were off.
This episode of Just Joshing is sponsored by Indie Imprint. Indie Imprint supports creators by creators. Whether you are writing a book or creating a video game, Indie Imprint works with its clients to produce, edit, and present their projects to the world. For more information, check out their website at www.indieimprint.com.
And that was Chapter 5, Part 5. I promise it now from here on in, it's pretty much going to be all action. The next chapter introduces the last cool character I meet. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the library and the training montages and all that stuff. I just found out I might be actually hosting a show with Katie of all people, so this ought to be fun and good. Anyway, so yeah, I might be hosting a show tonight, which would be kind of cool and weird and awesome and stuff. So, all that said, I gotta get to it. So, Katie Salidas, she's promising from the very, I got a story for you. And weeks and weeks and weeks went by, and well, I got my story now, which is great. So, yeah, I'm so looking forward to hearing this, and I guess you guys will be too. So without further ado, here's Katie's story.
All right. I am Katie Salidas, and I'm going to be doing a reading from A Weapon of Magical Destruction. That is book 1 in my Agents of A.S.S.E.T series. The first 4 books are available right now on all platforms, anywhere books are sold, and book 5 should be due out at the end of 2020. So let's get started. We're going to start actually in chapter 4. Achievement unlocked, Sage triumphantly announced to herself as she opened the door to her apartment, never more thankful to be back at home. Maddie, I've survived my quest to the homeland and returned relatively unscathed from the adventure. And what loot did you bring me? Matthew Donovan stalked towards the kitchen, stopping just a few feet away from the door. His bulky 6'3" frame blocked the passage further into the apartment. Arms crossed, he glared down, awaiting payment for safe passage. I come bearing gifts of tiny foil-packed food items from the Sky Kingdom, she smirked, holding up a handful of airplane snacks. He laughed. You are such a dork. Crossing the small distance between them, Matt pulled her into a bear hug, lifting Sage off the ground as he crushed the air from her lungs. Seriously, though, how you holding up, kid? Can't breathe, she feigned, gasping for air. Dying. Dead. Sage went limp in his arms. My spirit has left this realm. Such a drama queen. He set her down and held the door open so she could bring in her luggage. Seriously, I want to hear everything. Dish. He was the best kind of roommate she could hope for. Strong, nerdy, and best of all, only interested in men. He was equal parts gossip and guru and always there to listen and give advice. Thank the gods I have a sparring session tomorrow. She pulled her suitcase in and let it collapse on the linoleum floor. That bad, eh? Mark didn't, blah, 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 blah. Sorry, let's try that again. That bad, eh? Did Mark do the whole surrogate father thing, he asked? Sage walked into the living room and flopped down on the microfiber sofa. Worse, everything was crazy weird, like sci-fi weird. I was totally seeing things. I think I need a shrink or something. I'm losing my mind. Unloading her mental baggage felt so good she hardly realized how much her rambling made absolutely no sense. Sage took a breath and tried to find the tracks where her train of thought had derailed and start again. I felt so guilty. Mark looked like he was having a hard time dealing with Mom's loss too. And the worst part, he offered me a job. Why? Matt opened the fridge and grabbed 2 beers. He twisted the bottle caps off as he walked over. We're his closest family, so I guess he wants to make sure I'm taken care of now that both my parents are... She let the words, unspoken, float off into the air as she snatched a hold of the beer that Matt offered. I get that, he nodded thoughtfully. But why in God's name would you work for the same company that killed your mom? Damn, dude. Drive that nail in harder, why don't you? Sage snarled at him, feeling like he was downplaying the emotional turmoil that the death of her mom had caused. To his credit, Matt's expression matched the sorrowful tone as he said, Sorry, hun, I'll retract the clause. Just a bit, please. The wounds are still bleeding. She took a long pull from her beer, but the minute she swallowed, she knew it wouldn't be strong enough to dull the pain. In fact, she'd done a lot of drinking on the plane and in the airport bar before takeoff, and couldn't even remember feeling slightly buzzed. Something was seriously wrong with her. And it had all started when she'd gotten that first call from Mark with the bad news. I'm just saying, he's kind of an idiot for thinking you'd ever take the job. Matt took a sip of his beer. Maybe his heart was in the right place. Yeah, that point couldn't be argued. No matter what weirdness she'd seen back there in his office, Mark had made sure all the legalities were handled so she didn't have to fumble through them herself. That was the one thing she'd been able to count on her entire life, Mark. He was there to help take care of things. He'd been the father she'd never had. He had the house all packed up, too. He'd even lined up a storage unit to hold all the things until I'm ready. Those last words hung in the air, a reminder of what Mark had said to her in the car. When you're ready. As if he expected her to change her mind. Despite all her protest, despite all the pain she felt over her mother's death, why would he think she would ever be ready to go to work with him? You should totally keep the house, though, Matt suggested. His suggestion brought her back into the conversation. How long had she been lost in thought? Rental? She threw the word out without really giving it any thought. Yeah, in a vacation house for when we want to get away from Sin City. It's going to be a long time before I'm ready to go back. Would she ever be ready? No. If she were smart, she'd just sell the damn house and cut all ties. But those were thoughts she wasn't ready to entertain at that time. What she needed was distraction. Matt was normally good for helping cheer her up, but like the beer she continued to sip, the conversation with Matt was doing nothing to make her forget her troubles. You'll go back eventually. I'm not letting your mopey ass dwell forever. But at least I get a little time to dwell in goth-like darkness. She snarked at him. Oh no, honey. You are never to go goth. Don't make me raid your closet. He waggled a finger at her before taking another pull from his beer. That made her crack the smallest beginnings of a smile. I could totally pull off a Morticia Addams, though, right? Wednesday Addams, maybe, he scoffed, on a good day. Oh, so someone's going full diva today. When was the last time Josh came by? You need a serious dose of happy right now. Says the girl in mourning. He arched an eyebrow at her that was every bit as fierce as the tone in his voice. Touché. So since we both need a dose of happy and I don't have anything to punch till tomorrow for stress relief, how about we do the next best thing? A wickedly sharp smile stretched across his face. He dove for the television remote before Sage could reach it. Madman with a big blue box marathon? Only if I get to pick the doctor. She matched his fierce eyes with her own narrow-eyed glare, daring him to defy her. Rock, paper, scissors? He said calmly. My mother just died, she countered. Not fair. Playing with emotions? When did I ever give you the impression that I played fair? She asked, lowering her voice to a near whisper. She knew how to play the game. Of all the great battles waged throughout the centuries, this one continued to stir trouble between the sexes, and it would keep raging on long after they were dead and turned to dust. But today, she would win control of the remote, or die trying. But you always pick 10, he whined, countering her defiant stare with puppy dog eyes and a puffy lip. You evil little troll! No one can resist those baby blues. Put them away! She huffed and tried to make a show of turning away with an exaggerated shoulder slump of defeat. Whatever. It's fine. She used the secret weapon. Every man who has ever been in a relationship with a woman, platonic or not, knows the most deadly word in the female arsenal. Fine had a meaning all its own. Not something defined in any dictionary, but its significance came quickly after the word had been uttered. Pick 11, then. I know you love him more, she added with an extra dose of passive-aggressive spite. Ha! I win! Matt pumped his fist in the air triumphantly as if he had missed what she'd said. Or he simply didn't care. Not possible! She was the master of this game. She had said the magic word. Sage sent a deadly glare back over her shoulder. Perhaps he needed her to repeat herself. But because I'm the best roommate in the whole world, Matt said, laughing at her angry face. I'm not going to pick 11 this time. I will graciously give in to your desperate need for cheering up, and I will watch the first season of 10. The most worthy of adversaries, he played her well and managed to come out looking like the champion. Good game, sir. Matt was her soulmate in every way except physical, and it didn't hurt that he was drop-dead gorgeous either. Why did all the good ones have to be gay? All the man candy she could take, but none of the calories. He was the ultimate forbidden fruit. And that's why I love you so much. She stood and headed for the kitchen, considering their battle of wills a tie. I'll make the popcorn. Grab me another beer too, would ya, honey? Sure thing, baby cakes, she giggled and reached into the fridge to grab another amber bottle and stopped short. Knocking it into the shelf, she noticed her wrist. At first, she thought too much sun had given her freckle to go with the tree-like veins branching out from under her skin. But now her eyes were truly playing tricks on her. The leaf-shaped sunspot had multiplied, dotting her wrist in a semicircle around the top of her birthmark. What the hell? You okay in there? Matt asked. How long have you known me? She pulled back her wrist, leaving the bottle on its side in the fridge. Holding it like a wound, she walked back into the living room. Years. Why? Confusion added to the concerned look on Matt's face. I swear my eyes are playing tricks on me. What do you see? She held her wrist out for him to inspect. Did you get some ink done while in Phoenix? I like the whole tree of life thing you're trying to do. He smiled and traced the new semicircle of leaves with his finger. How is it healed so soon? Okay, so I'm not insane then. You see it too? She sighed, but not in relief. She might not have been the only one seeing things, but that didn't explain how she'd gotten new markings. That's not ink? Matt asked. No. Sage ran to the kitchen again and lathered up her arm with soap and ran it under the hottest water she could stand. Scrubbing didn't remove the marks either. What the hell is this? Don't peel your skin off. Matt came to the rescue with a towel and some lotion. She rubbed herself raw, but the marks still remained. Neither raised bumps nor sunken impressions. They were just there as if her skin had manifested them. Like magic. It actually looks pretty cool. It makes all your little squiggles look like a real pattern now. What are you stressing about? Marks don't just appear out of thin air. And anxiety sharpened her tone. Freckles do? Too much sun? What if it's cancer? Or something like it? Whoa, way to jump straight into the worst case scenario there, lady. How about we take a breath first and calm down? There had to be an explanation for this. Magic was something that kids believed in, the stuff of fantasy and games, fun to play at, but in the real world, it didn't exist. All the crap she'd seen or dreamed made her feel as if she was on the edge of a complete mental breakdown. That, or something else she couldn't possibly say out loud, because it was equally crazy. What's the first sign of skin cancer, right? Strange freckles and moles? Her stress level had already been at 12, and it was quickly notching higher with each freaky thing that happened. Soon, she'd be in full panic attack mode, and there was no mom around to help her. Mom had always been her rock. Mom had always had an answer. Mom was dead. Her head began to spin. The world blurred as tears flooded her vision. Her heart knocked frantically at the walls of her chest, desperate to be freed of the constant pain of its cage. If only. There was no escape. No easy way out of this. Sage had to learn the hardest lesson of all, how to endure. Because her mom would never again be able to make everything better. Mom's gone. She gasped the words as her lungs fought against the very air she tried to breathe. She swooned from lightheadedness and her knees buckled. She'd have crashed to the ground if not for the strength of Matt's arms. Slowly now, he pulled her into a bear hug and gently stroked her head. In and out, nice, deep breaths. You're fine. You do not have cancer. Where she was in a panic, he was calm, and his voice was soothing, and it guided her back from the brink. She had fallen backwards from her panic attack straight into full-blown depression. Matt made the landing as soft as possible. Thank the gods for him. Words failed her. She opened her mouth, but all that came out were mouse-like squeaks. Come on, the doctor will see you now. Matt walked her back into the living room and hit the button on the remote. The theme music came on and for a moment paused her downward spiral into madness. I'm a hot mess right now. I know, but you're allowed to be, and I'm here for you. And if you're worried, we'll make an appointment with a dermatologist. I know a decent one. You're too good to me, you know that? She had finally found her breath and sucked in as much air as her lungs could hold before letting go with a loud sigh. Matt disappeared into the kitchen and returned with 2 more beers. You say that now, but wait till you get my bill. Her wrist began to itch again, but Sage didn't dare look at it, fearing another spot might appear. Somehow, it all tied her to her mom and all the crazy things that she had seen, which had started after Mom died. And then there was that birthmark. It had grown more like her mother's in the last few days. Sage might have been in mourning, but she wasn't going crazy. Even Matt had seen the change. There was a connection, an answer to the question she didn't have words for, but she doubted a dermatologist would know. All right, since we got a little bit more time, I'm going to move right on into Chapter 5. Chapter 5. The alarm blared with an ear-piercing intensity. Sage whimpered at the clock, pleading for it to stop without having to get up and hit the button. The damn thing never listened. Instead, it kept screaming at her from across the room. The true master of the morning. On a whispered curse, Sage lifted herself from the bed and began the ritual of making herself look human for the workday ahead. Life under normal circumstances was a mind-numbing routine of business casual dress, coffee on the run, microwave lunch at her cubicle station, monotony at its finest, but she couldn't complain. Fresh out of college and working an entry-level position in a large accounting firm was more than many people her age had, and she counted herself lucky for it. Sage lumbered into the office and tossed her gym bag under the desk. It wasn't even 9 in the morning, and her inbox looked like Mount St. Helens, threatening to erupt at any moment. That was her punishment for daring to take 2 days bereavement leave. Cost to complete still needed to be entered, piles of charge-offs, and expense forms needed to be sorted by job. And if she managed to finish those tasks, there was always the endless stacks of filing. She mentally prepared for the thrilling day of carpal tunnel and paper cuts as she booted up her computer. "Back so soon?" Genevieve called out from behind the cubicle wall. Her quad desk neighbor was an accounting lifer, 30-something with kids and an addiction to caffeine. She had already been working for the company 8 years when Sage was hired on. She was also the office gossip guru. "It's not like I can afford to be off long, still have bills to pay, right?" Sage peeked over the top of the cubicle to speak. Her mask must have fallen. Sage thought she had hidden her despair enough to manage the workday, but the pity reflected back in Genevieve's hazel eyes said otherwise. "You doing okay, honey?" She had the mom voice down pat, and just that simple phrase brought Sage back to tears. She ducked down below her wall of her cubicle, hoping to shield herself from the embarrassment. But there, too, she found reminders of just how gaping the hole in her heart was. A card had been wedged between her keyboard and monitor, signed by the whole office, a touching note of solidarity. The waterworks were coming, but she couldn't break down. Not here, not now. I'm fine. She sniffled back her emotions, hoping to dam them up inside. "I just need to bury myself in work. If you need anything, sweetie, just let me know. I've got your back." "I will." Sage packed up the card away in her bag to avoid being sent into another fit of tears. She had to be strong. Her inbox was calling, and there was more than enough work there to keep her busy for the rest of the year. After a few deep breaths, she was able to put the mask back on. "Oh, and plan for margaritas on Friday. We're putting together a happy hour at the Iguana," Genevieve chirped happily between shuffles of paper. "Don't tell the rest of the girls, but your first drink's on me, okay?" Pain relief with a salted rim, who could say no to that? Even if it did mean socializing with the accounting team. Harkening back to the old school lunchroom social hierarchy, the in-office was well-defined. Dealing with each person one-to-one was easy enough when you had deadlines and assigned tasks to complete. But beyond the confines of the cubicle and job titles, navigating the various personalities required a skill and finesse that Sage had not quite yet mastered. Like on a reality TV show, befriending and allying yourself with the right people could save your job. Before she could answer, Genevieve warned, "Heads up, Marcy's on the warpath." Someone on the uniform accounts misplaced a decimal point on a CTC change request, and she fired them on the spot. "Seriously?" Sage popped her head over the wall again, shocked to hear Genevieve's report. "Oh, yeah. Word is Marcy's getting a divorce, so stay off her radar until everything cools down. But you didn't hear that from me. My lips are sealed." She pantomimed, zipping her mouth, and retook her seat. Hours dragged on as Sage meticulously went line by line, entering job cost information into a spreadsheet. The numbers began to look the same after a while, and the gentle clack of the keys as she typed became hypnotic in its cadence. She'd fall into their spell if she didn't do something quick. Coffee was the only solution, but as she stood to grab her cup, she bumped into the infamous Marcy. Sage shrieked, and her heart nearly stopped. Marcy had the reputation for being the troll of the accounting office. Ruthless as she was evil, the department head known for cutting costs as well as employees with a brutal efficiency. That alone was enough to make Sage fear stepping on her toes. But on first glance, the normally posh and well-dressed head of accounts had suddenly grown a foot taller. Her skin became a sickly grayish green that had nothing to do with the fluorescent lights above. "Follow me, please, Miss Sinrig." Coal-black eyes coal black eyes stared straight through Sage as teeth like razors snapped together after the shrill order. Staring dumbstruck at her boss, whose face had suddenly sprouted moles with thick black hairs jutting out from their tops, Sage couldn't bring herself to do more than slap a hand over her mouth to keep it from gaping in surprise. Was this a joke? It had to be. But Marcy wasn't the kind of woman who played around. She was as strict as they came and known for having no personality whatsoever, which had earned her the nickname Troll. But to see her standing there looking the part, Marcy even had the long-tipped ears to match. Sage didn't even want to look down at her feet, but searching for somewhere else to look, she did, and nearly shrieked again. They were the most claw-looking than foot. Let me try that again. They were more claw-looking than foot, with red painted talons for toenails. What the hell is happening to me? It wasn't the first time Sage had seen a transformation like this, and seeing her boss now reminded her of the dream she had, the army of trolls fighting in a magical war. Is there a problem? Marcy growled, after an uncomfortably long period of silence had earned stares from everyone within viewing range. Sage blinked and shook her head. By the time she opened her eyes again, her boss had reappeared. Curls of fiery red hair circled heavily around her made-up, heart-shaped face. Very human face, I might add. Dark eyes still glared at her, reminding Sage that she was not in a position to cause problems. Sorry, ma'am. Sage gulped back her initial revulsion. Snap out of it! Her mind had been playing tricks on her lately. Stress and grief were playing havoc with her sanity. My office. Now, Marcy demanded. The rumor mill girls were standing up at their desk, looking to see what the commotion was about. If she still had a job after this meeting with Marcy, she might need to check in and see if her insurance benefits included mental health. More and more, it seemed like a shrink was in order. Sage hung her head and slowly made the walk of shame to Marcy's office. I'm sorry to hear about the passing of your family member. I hope you were able to settle affairs during your bereavement. Marcy marched through her office, taking a seat behind the large desk. Sage took the spot opposite of the desk, but didn't sit. She bit her tongue to avoid scoffing. She had all of 2 days to make it home and back, hardly time for a true mourning or settling of anything. But at strike one, she knew better than to reply with anything less than, yes, ma'am. Cunning eyes stared at her from head to toe, looking for another strike to add to her tally. May I remind you, Miss Sinrig, we have a standard of appearance here. Instinctively, Sage pulled back her arm, covering it quickly, but it was too late. Marcy whipped a manicured fingernail, aiming it straight at her wrist. Tattoos of any kind may not be visible during work hours. It's not a tattoo, it's a birthmark. Not now, please, not now. Just the thought of having to talk about it made her cringe. Marcy's eyes dilated cruelly, and her lips parted in a smile more frightening than anything Sage had seen before. And as if she had gift-wrapped a reason to be fired, her boss held out her hand and demanded, "Let me see." With a defeated sigh, Sage reluctantly showed her deformity. Embarrassment at the highest caliber, working in the right-to-work state gave employers carte blanche when it came to firing people. By rights, she shouldn't have to reveal any part of her body to an employer. But at the risk of losing her job, it was the lesser of two evils. Marcy snatched her arm, pulling Sage off balance as she brought it closer. She cringed and closed her eyes, waiting for her boss's verdict. But rather than the sting of the guillotine's blade, she felt hard wood, the desk, as her knuckles crashed down. Marcy sucked in a breath, dropping Sage's hand as if it burned her. When their eyes met across the desk, it was Marcy who looked frightened this time, but that fleeting emotion quickly disappeared behind her usual mask of self-importance. I see. Quite an interesting birthmark? Is that what you're calling it? Marcy averted her eyes, suddenly taking more interest in the papers in her desk. Yes, ma'am. Something about her deformity had struck a chord with Marcy. Most people thought it was ugly or bad ink job. No one had ever responded with fear after seeing it. Still avoiding eye contact, Marcy asked, "Who was it again who passed away? My mother, Sage responded as calmly as she could. A moment passed in stunned silence before Marcy finally looked up at Sage. Emotions warred for control over her boss's face. Eyes that had been calculating and cruel moments before were suddenly softened. Fine lines appeared at her brow as if she were deep in thought, but she didn't speak her mind. I'll do my best to keep it covered, Sage offered as a way to break the silence. I'm truly sorry, dear. I'm sure this loss has affected you in more ways than you can imagine. Yes, thank you. Her boss's words were too kind. There had to be a trap somewhere in the conversation. Perhaps you should take a little more time off to grieve, Marcy continued. And there it was. Her job was about to be eliminated. Even the cruelest of trolls couldn't let her go directly after a death in her family. But if she played her cards along, maybe she'd get enough paid time off to find another job. Okay. Sage hung her head as she turned towards the door. Have Genevieve take over your duties for the next week. How could Marcy speak so sweetly as she stabbed someone in the back? No wonder she was getting divorced. That woman was pure evil. Oh, and I'll make sure your paycheck is delivered to your apartment. No need to come down here and pick it up. Am I being let go? Sage decided just to go for blunt. What was the worst that could happen? When do I come back? Marcy smiled, but it was far from genuine. We'll discuss your career later, after you've had proper time to grieve and deal with all the changes. Cruelty with a dash of crafty on top. What a bitch! There has got to be a special place in hell for trolls like her. Sage took her leave and headed back to her desk. You okay? Genevieve asked, popping her head over the cubicle. I think I just got fired, Sage replied. She fired you? She told me I should take more time to grieve. Those were her exact words. Sage picked up her bag. Oh, and she'll mail me my check. The reality of being let go from her job hadn't quite settled in, but the anger was quickly taking hold. Unless she said you're fired, you still have a job, Genevieve offered with a weak smile. Semantics aside, Sage knew her time with the company was over. It might be a week or more before the paperwork was sent to her, but the truth was obvious. Her hands shook with anxiety as the realization hit her. She might have to consider Mark's offer to work at A.S.S.E.T. Her mom might be dead, but she still had a life to live, and she couldn't do that without a job. All right, so that is chapter 4 and 5, and I think we've read for long enough. So if that was interesting or enticing or exciting to you, please definitely check out my Agents of A.S.S.E.T series. Book 1 is A Weapon of Magical Destruction. You can find me online at katiesalidas.com. That's KatieSalidas.com. I'll talk to you guys later. Thanks, Josh, for having me on. Bye-bye.
This is Kathleen with BookBrush, and I wanted to tell you a little bit about BookBrush.com. Our team developed BookBrush for authors like you after having hundreds of conversations with authors that were struggling with creating images or simply paying too much per image to have a graphic designer do the job. So we created, for authors specifically, the easiest way to create professional ads and social media images for your books. We'd love to have you join us at bookbrush.com.
Wow. Okay, so let's get my thoughts in order here. First things first. Katie, thank you for reading. You're an amazing talent. I truly think you need to believe in yourself even more than what you are. You are one of the most gifted writers, writing people, period, I know. Great to have you on in any capacity, and folks, we have a really cool interview coming out in September, and it's going to be amazing, I promise. So there's that. As far as the advertisement you just heard, that's going to be my other thing. Once When Words Collide is done, I have a meeting for BookBrush. BookBrush is a great little program for any author trying to finalize like ads, covers. It's a great package. They do a lot of cool work. It's definitely worth the $80 to pay for a year's membership. Especially someone like me who's got multiple books coming out in a year. They do great stuff, and it's really, really simple. They're going to be doing a demonstration on my Zoom as his live Zoomcast podcast interview. on the 27th of August. It's going to be great. I hope you guys check it out. Wow, I got a ton on the plate. You don't realize what you're doing until you're actually talking about this. And then also, starting this week, I'm going to be looking seriously for audiobook clients. So I've been putting together an audiobook. This has been my practice. I've learned an awful lot about audiobooks and doing them. I don't always work them to the highest standards on the show that I can, although I've already just made a major improvement in the last few with just a couple small things. But I've been working really hard on putting a proper book together. These Storytime podcasts have been a great experience for me. I've learned an awful lot more about audio in terms of quality that I did not consider before. So, guys, if you want me to do and tell your stories to the best of my ability with me or some of the voice talents I have access to, give me a shout. Business is officially open now. So, find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, my email. Contact me. We'll set up something for you. That will do it for this episode of Just Joshing. If you want to support the podcast, you can do so in a number of different ways. Subscribe to the podcast. I'm on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and soon a few other platforms as well, including Amazon. Speaking of Amazon, my books, Alice Zero, is for pre-order right now. Definitely did put your hand on it. It's $1.99. It's epic poetry written by myself and illustrated by the one and only Kenzie Carr. It's amazing and awesome. Also, I have The Cloud Diver written by myself, illustrated by Lance Baum. You've been hearing it every week. Hopefully, you guys are interested enough to pick it up. I hope so. Take a look, pick it up, buy it, let people know about it. My YouTube channel is Josh Pentel-Resco. Past episodes of my show are there. Beyond all that, guys, stay inspired. Keep doing your thing. Thanks for listening. Like I said, this episode won't air. The next Storytime won't air until Sunday. But I promise you, Brian Tan's going to knock it out of the park for you. All right, guys. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you next week.
Josh.